Water Lessons is a program that celebrates learning through doing. We invite water specialists from various fields of knowledge and research to host each monthly lesson and to provide a new lens to understand water as material, muse and resource. Through Water Lessons, it is our aim to unpack the qualities, powers, threats and future imaginaries of water together.
Weathering, one, is adding more weather to the way we think about culture. Two, it's a feminist concept because we're beginning with the material. We're going to think about our bodies. You've already kind of shared something about your place, something about how you kind of manage your body in relation to the world. And feminist thinking doesn't necessarily have to relate to gender. It can relate to or sex. It can relate to just thinking very materially about practice and bodies. So that's that comes through a feminist tradition of thinking. In a settler colonial context, the history of weather in Australia is through a European lens, and it also has historically been associated with things that are not very interesting, like relations that are kind of boring and banal.
Initially, it wasn't a very public thing. It was sort of just us seeing what we could do together around the concept of weathering and unpacking that in a more in terms of practice and in terms of ways of living and activities. Like a couple of years ago, we did a bigger workshop in Armidale as part of a project Jen runs there called the Community Operated Weathering Station. And we've written sort of about that practice-based activity afterwards. So now it's quite nice to come back and, be in the practice together again under the Weathering Collective and see how we can take some of those ideas further.
I've been to each of the water lessons and today was our final lesson in the series, and it felt like a really beautiful way to land, talking about weather. I've been familiar with the work of the Weathering Collective now for a couple of months, but I was really excited to learn more about their practice, and in particular this notion of weather as both a noun and a verb. So the weather of the climate and the microclimate, but also the affect of that on the body, to weather a stone or to weather the skin. And what we've learned from audiences throughout this series is that they're really interested to learn more about how the body situates itself in an environment or a place. And I think weather is a really interesting way of opening up conversation about that, because evidently we are affected by it and affected by it, and we can't escape it.
I love the session today. It was very intimate, and then we were talking about weather and just thinking about how weather changed your behavior and changed your way of life, and also how to navigate different seasons, and how that is also correlated with being a society that is being colonized. As Colombian, we've been colonized by Spain, and Australia has been colonized by United Kingdom. So yeah, it was interesting, and I love the topics that we discussed during the session, creating the jar. Actually, the activity that I most enjoyed was actually doing the doodling. I love creating doodles and just having the experience of thinking very fast and draw fast. It was really enjoyable.
It was really amazing today to get back into a space with other people and not be too worried about transmission of COVID, but also we have been developing the concept for a long time, and in today's workshop we tried to have activities that brought together all aspects of the concept. So the concept is weathering, and it means adding more weather to the way that we think about the world and how we think about it, all issues, not just about the weather report. It also is about embodied practice and how we sort of sense the weather, and also how that links us to the vastness of climate change. But in addition to that, we also like to think about bodily difference, like how we all weather differently, and how at a social level the weather is managed for us, and how that could be done differently to enact new forms of social justice in a time of climate change.